Welcome to Media Moses Weekly, the weekly roundup of articles from our own Media Moses and from the relevant entertainment news. Topics this week include Green&Gold on Angel app, the Faerie Queene successfully funded, and Isabel Brown hired by DW. But for now, what media experiences have you had this week, Rebecca?
I have been reading a book that was recommended to me. Actually, not reading it, listening to it, called Church of Cowards, um,
Yes, me too.
by Matt Walsh, and um, it was unexpected. Like I'm only about three or four chapters in, and like the first chapter starts off with this idea that um, pagan hordes come to America to try to kill all the Christians and destroy Christianity. And they can't find a single Christian who actually adheres to their faith. And so it's kind of funny. And I was like
Yeah.
following along and then but then he
It's
starts
like
to,
they're already pagans like us.
yes, yeah, which is
Yeah,
very interesting.
it's kind of a disturbing thought.
Yeah. And so then he starts to talk about uh well, he basically just starts to talk about what it means to follow Christ. And that was the part I like extremely enjoyed a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he talked about how Christ cannot be some kind of side thing. It can't be like
Yeah.
some kind of hobby for you. Like he's a person and he's God and he wants all of you and he wants you to give him everything and then he wants to become your everything.
Yes, Jesus is
And
not your boyfriend or some side fling. He is your God. Yes.
yeah, I
He has
mean,
to
well,
dominate your
he's your
everything.
husband.
Yeah.
So he's your one and only. So that message is, one of my favorite messages. And, um, it's the message, really.
Hmm.
Christ is all in all, and he can be your everything because he is your everything. And I think one of the biggest problems, sorry, I'm getting excited about this topic.
It's
And I
okay.
think one of the biggest problems he's talking about, these churches that are no longer interested in Christ as the center of their worship
Right.
is because they haven't been taught that Christ alone satisfies. And
Mm.
so they're seeing this like, okay, well, Christianity is just my faith. It's like the box that I check, it's my religion.
Right.
But then I mix in with all these other things. And that's okay. I'm allowed to do that because of grace or whatever. So I'm just allowed to um, do basically whatever I want. But um,
Yeah, which is kind of disturbing when you think about it. Like, how
and
are
it's
you any
not,
different from the world? Yeah.
yeah, it's and it's not really devotion. And it's not really a life. It's not really the abundant life that I think Jesus is referring to when he says, I come to bring you life more abundantly.
Right. Right.
It's basically the world. Do you look different from the world or
Yeah.
not?
Yeah.
And so that was really powerful. I really appreciated that part of the message. He also, I want to say it was like the second chapter where he switched into, I believe it's like the second person, where
Mm.
you start to talk to the reader and you say, you are doing this and you are doing that.
Right.
And, but it was really powerful because he was talking to the reader as if they were about to become a martyr.
Mm. Yeah.
And so he was saying, you're being held at gunpoint and someone is asking you to renounce Jesus and you're terrified, but then you feel the strength rise up inside of you and you realize you could never deny Christ. And I was just like, man, I'm really encouraged by that. Like that was
Yeah.
really edifying. And I didn't expect that from a book called Church of Cowards. But
Yeah.
um it was really cool. So that was what I wanted to share. I got a lot out of those first few chapters, but I know you're reading it too, right?
Yeah, I actually went through the whole thing on my trip because I audiobooked it and just listened to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the of course the one disadvantage of that is I don't remember each chapter now. Like you just said you remembered some of the things references in each chapter. It's more of like for me like a memory of like wow, our church has issues. Like this
Hmm.
general kind of impression. And I think later on, after I returned from my trip, we did talk about the seeker sensitive church and
Yeah.
how we thought we were doing a good thing back then. And we now realize, hopefully people realize that that was a seriously miscalculated error in the church. And what they were doing is instead of bringing people into the faith, they were accepting and tolerating a worldly Christianity in their midst and not trying to make disciples in their church
Yeah.
any longer. Instead, almost the opposite, becoming disciples of the world.
Mm.
And so that's kind of a disturbing thing to realize, when, because in a way I was, on board with the seeker
Hmm.
sensitive church idea.
Me
This was
too.
maybe what, mid 2000s, something like that.
Yeah.
I was on board with this idea. Obviously there was a few scandals in some of these churches, which kind of opened my eyes to the possibility that this was a bad idea. And we weren't really that deeply involved in it personally, so we didn't see it firsthand. We didn't see some of these churches firsthand, but I think we were open to the idea of it, right? And as evangelicals, for the most part, I think we have always been okay with things like worship music that's a little more contemporary, things like that. I think that I think the idea is that you do want to worship God in a way that you can understand and feel. And so, when the things that you feel are more contemporary in style, that's going to speak to you. And so I don't think there's anything morally or doctrinally wrong with this idea. But is it really speaking to you in a way that the church really should be speaking to us? And is that really the best way to let the Holy Spirit speak to us? So these are all big questions. And when you compare so many denominational manifestations of praise, there's a lot more that evangelical churches could do. And I do think that there's beauty in the old hymns, for example. And I do think there's beauty in kind of uh, the idea of a liturgy. There's beauty in taking the sacraments seriously. There's beauty in that. And I think that churches need more beauty.
I agree.
I don't think that having less beauty is a good idea.
Hmm.
And if churches are making so much money that they can do a bunch of strange things in their churches and have movie nights and have all these other events happening and have conventions and all these things, then they can spend money on making their church more beautiful,
Mm.
which can benefit everyone in the church at all times. So, I think that some of these decisions were bad decisions, and but at the time that they were made, maybe they were the best decisions to make.
Hmm.
So it's not me judging the church at the time, but I do think that the church now can realize that we can do even better. So I think that's kind of the point of a book like Church of Cowards. I don't think it's about necessarily condemning so much the church as it is about seeing that the church can do better.
Yeah.
And as well as our country could do better to make connections with our Christian heritage and realize that our laws are supposed to be written from a Christian perspective. And if they're not written from a Christian perspective, then they're not written with moral integrity. So if we're Christians, we realize that God's law has moral integrity, and our own ideas of laws don't really have that much moral integrity. They're just kind of ways to move around pieces on a board, but they're not morally valuable. So it's better to have laws that have moral weight to them so that we're preventing our society from crumbling and becoming corrupted and things like this. And that really does form a wall against our nation crumbling into pieces. So like the Church of Cowards idea really plays into that because we realize that not only has it had an impact on the fabric of our churches, but on the fabric of society in general, on our culture in general, on our entertainment in general, and on government in general. All of these things have been affected by a weak, cowardly church. So, decisions have been made, and now we can look back and say, huh, maybe that wasn't a great idea, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Yeah. I think it's time for the church, for believers to just not be afraid of just being themselves, of just being like the
yes,
bride of Christ, of being in love with Christ, of being centered on Christ and focused
hmm
on him and excited about him.
yeah,
Like we should, right? Like, you know, there's a kind of foolishness in our love and excitement and joy for Jesus. We don't have to like tone it down and try to look like the world and try to act like we're not happy and try
right,
to act like we're not being blessed because we are as his church. Like we're living a good life and we have
yeah,
our God is providing everything that we need. And I think we need to just like embrace it if even if it makes us look weird, like we just do things differently and not try to look like the world,
hmm
but try to look like his bride, whatever that looks like. His bride doesn't look like the world's.
I mean, the Bible in so many words already says we're like a quirky people. We're kind of
Yeah.
quirky, and that's actually good. That's how he likes us. So,
Well, and I like how you said that. That's how he likes us because I was going to say that validation from God is so much more rewarding than the dodging that Christians do to avoid being canceled or avoid being
right.
condemned by the world or avoid being, you know,
Not seeker sensitive
called
enough. Yeah.
called a bigot or something.
Yeah.
Like just love Jesus and let that be the validation that he first loved you. And
Right.
that's all you need.
Right. Yeah, and a wealth of scripture really plays into this. When you feel the wealth of scripture validating you, right? It does let you know you're on the right track and that you shouldn't feel ashamed for whether it's, having an ability to know scripture maybe better than someone else. It's not about a comparison, right? But it is about understanding that when you have the words of God in you, you have something to say. And that something to say might offend lots of people, but you don't need to feel bad about that because that's really God speaking through you. It's not
Yeah.
really you. In fact, the point of it is to give up your own will and let Him have His way in your life. And that means the standards in your life are going to change.
Yeah.
All the things you allow in your home, all the things you allow in your community, all the things you allow for your kids to learn from in school, all of that changes as a Christian. So, and this is the kind of society we successfully forged in our country in the USA when we said, listen, we have standards in our communities. And that standard is to take, make a good future for our children, establish law and order, you know, and all of these things are a blessing to people of all different colors, classes, sexes, all of that. So the accusation that conservative, Christian, right-wingers, or whatever you want to call us, is is against this kind of equality is absurd. It's just always been absurd. And I'll go a step further. The idea that capitalism as well is a bad idea is absurd. It's just absurdist comedy. So now, certainly you could say that there's protectionism happening or corruption happening in some of these local governments, and that works its way into capitalist systems. But that's not capitalism, right? That's not what it's about. So free markets are about you, me getting together, doing trade in a mutually beneficial way. And the reason I'm bringing capitalism into this is because it's a moral community lets people mutually work together to have arrangements that benefit everybody. Because part of the great commandments Jesus gives us is to love God and love your neighbors yourself. And if you love your neighbors yourself, you don't want a raw deal to come to your neighbor when you're working together with someone. You want a fair deal between you. When you're in the marketplace, you're buying stuff, you're providing goods for someone else, you're serving the community. And you also get served, if you're in a Christian community, by your community. And that's not a bad thing. We want to do that. We want to obey Jesus in the marketplace as well. And so we want fair deals. And certainly you can bring a complaint if you don't feel it's a fair deal, but that's part of the system too. Part of the system is having a voice and saying, I didn't like this deal. This wasn't fair. Like take it to the magistrate, take it to the guy in charge, take it to a lawyer, take it to somebody. There's somebody you can go to in a Christian system. So you're not left down the street, like you've got people who can vouch for you, provide for you, help you. And that's what a Christian society is supposed to do. So whether it's in the church, like with Church of Cowards, whether it's in government, whether it's in the workplace, we want to come forward with a loving, equitable, um, love your neighbor approach to all these things. And when we can do that, it benefits everybody. You really can have a win-win in that kind of society because Jesus makes it implicitly a requirement that we love our neighbor. And so why would you oppose this? This is a golden rule kind of law. You love your neighbor as you would love, as you do unto them as you would have them do unto you, right? So you put yourself in their shoes and say, how would I like to be treated? Okay, I'm going to treat them that way, the way I would like to be treated, right? So you don't ignore the fact that if you're treating someone harshly, imagine that someone's treating you that way. Well, that's not very cool. So this just takes a little bit of thought about your neighbor. That's part of loving your neighbor. So not having a strong Christian community in our country really has a massive impact on our country. So I agree with you. I think that Church of Cowards was a good book. I enjoyed it as well. And I almost want to read it again because I did kind of miss the point of each individual chapter by now. I just read the whole thing and I was like, oh, wow. Because if you remember, I was like driving all the way through the night to
Yeah.
come back home from Missouri. So
Yeah.
I gave it away. I was in Missouri. I went to college in Missouri for a year. I'm familiar with the state to some degree. I really enjoy it there. So we might be purchasing property there. We'll see. But was there any other media experiences this week?
No, what media have you been experiencing this week, John?
Well, I mean, I have been reading a few audiobooks as well, other than that one. I also looked into two of Nate Wilson's books. One of them was The Tilt-A-Whirl, and the other one was what was it? Death by Living or something. I don't remember. Really interesting writing. He does really interesting writing. But I haven't finished much of his work yet. Of course, stories this week are the Green and the Gold on the Angel app. Let me see if I can share. Media Moses here. Yeah, here we go. The Green and the Gold. If you missed it in theaters, it's now streaming on Angel. Um, I have not seen this film yet, but I really enjoyed the trailer. And one of the reasons I wanted to do a story on this was because like when I watched the trailer, I was like, this looks like the farmland up in Missouri. It was very similar looking. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, a film made by and for the American farmer who need that additional help. Green and Gold is a love letter to their cause, starring Craig T. Nelson of Wag the Dog and Incredibles, Brandon Sklenar, It Ends With Us, Drop, and Madison Lawlor, Until Forever, and Casa Grande, who I think is a TV show. As stated on Angel, Green and Gold tells the story of a dairy farmer in Wisconsin, Buck, who's Craig T. Nelson, with mounting debt and the land his family has cultivated for 4 generations at risk. Buck refuses to give up his legacy without a fight. Buck's granddaughter, Madison Lawlor, works alongside him but dreams of a career in music. However, chasing her dreams might take her far from the farm. With time running out, Buck places a daring bet on the Green Bay Packers winning the championship, risking it all to save everything. This is not normally a good idea, guys.
What?
You don't need to actually bet the farm that the Green Bay Packers are going to win. And so I write, so this is a sports drama, but also an artist and farmer story on top of it. But the truth is even more heartfelt. It is an American story about the grassroots of this country. How do you survive when you're divided between love for self and love for family and country? You've got to put yourself to the side for the moment. But the struggle associated with that can change your life forever. And this struggle is happening around this country all the time now. It's about not giving up on them. There are lots of great films like this on the Angel platform now, and some of them are worth having an evening with popcorn, knowing that no strange Hollywood ideology will ruin your night. That's so I think you do have to be a member to watch this one, but it's I think it'll be worth watching. In fact, might as well watch the trailer here.
Yeah.
For my Grandpa Buck, farming wasn't a job or even a way of life. It was a sacred act.
Easy, easy, easy.
For him, it wasn't the frozen tundra. It was the Garden of Eden.
Does your granddad know where you're headed?
He knows I'll be home later.
I couldn't do farming anymore. I was on my way out for some bigger dreams.
This ain't your land.
Well, when you don't pay your loan, it becomes my land.
What was that about?
Where the hell you been?
Talked to Godey. Apparently she's got some musicians staying up at her cabin up on the big lake.
I'm Jenny.
Jenny, local musician. Cody said you might be stopping by.
How much do we owe the bank?
You think I like tearing down the little guy, Buck? You think I like it?
Well, your license plate says a-hole.
I will make a little wager with you. The pack go all the way, I will give you another year, interest-free. And if they lose, you sign everything over to me.
Take it.
No, we ain't betting, folks, Johnny.
I want to take your tape and share it with my manager.
Your granddaughter's, she's really talented.
Yeah, I know that. You do anything to hurt her, and I will hunt you down, and I'll gut you like a 10-pointer.
Great.
What do you think you're doing? I'm gonna take the bet.
You better pray God owes the pack a favor.
You know that no one cares about our little slice of nothing in the middle of nowhere.
I do.
I want to hear you before you become rich and famous.
No guarantee of that. You go chasing your hopes and your dreams, you forget who you are. And there is nothing worth the cost of losing everything that's wild and free.
In real life, miracles don't always arrive on time.
And the pack beat the bears.
And the good guy doesn't always win.
You still believe in what we're doing?
More than anything.
Go back.
Wow.
Wow, it
what,
looks good.
what do you bet they're gonna not lose the farm? See, that's the
Yeah.
thing is like, yes, this looks like a very charming film. I mean, the visuals look so
Yeah.
much better than the typical faith-based film. And it
Mhm.
doesn't really even play like a faith-based film as it comes to the messaging. The messaging, well, let me amend that statement. It's not a explicitly Christian film. So I don't think that there's a church that they're talking, they're inviting the boyfriend to come to the church with them and all this stuff. And then the guy has to realize actually it was his failure with not going to church enough.
He's just got to get his life
He just
together.
got to get his life together and man up, and then he'll be able to. No. So it's not faith-based in that sense, but it does look to follow the faith-based formula. Like literally I wrote there, so it's a sports drama and an artist story and a farmer story. That appears to be like what's three of the biggest tropes in faith-based formulas
Yeah.
that you've seen. All we needed is someone to get hit by a car and get put in the hospital, and then there to be a miracle to come down, and then that's the only extra trope we would need to make this work. Or and a child who has autism or something, or a dog, like yes, that would make it even more faith-based in its formulaicness. But I have to say, the aesthetic is less and less cheesy as we go along, right? It gets less and less cheesy. Sure, I didn't like the references to the football thing and the references to like, are you gonna believe in this family? We're gonna put this family together again. Like a lot of those things are a little tropish, in some ways, lots very tropish. But you have to like, the song. She started singing a song and and then the themes start coming out that are a little richer than the typical faith-based film, right? Some of the themes that start coming out are a little more rich. Were there any themes that you kind of started to latch onto there in that trailer?
I just like what I caught from it was just like the frailty of losing something that had so much history, but not just history, but like kind of an
Mm.
expectation
Yeah.
attached to it. Like, as if there was this family history.
Right, like family versus your own personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did like that because I feel like that's a good question to explore because so oftentimes we have the movie that says you've got to leave the small farm, you've got to leave the small town to go pursue your dreams. And
Right.
that's what people say. They say pursue your dreams. And I'm not saying that's a bad message, but like maybe there's a movie about someone who instead gives up their life to
Mm.
pursue someone else's dreams or like, to
Yep.
support someone else in their dreams
Yeah.
being fulfilled. That would,
Sacrificial.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a theme that I noticed, and I like to think that maybe that's where the movie's going, um,
Yeah.
because that would be unusual. I don't usually see that in
Right.
movies.
And not in the faith-based genres either.
Yeah.
Sadly, faith-based genres should be the most Jesus-like and
Hmm.
self-sacrificial, but it's still pretty rare to see it,
Yeah.
I think. Especially for the like lead, not to get too political, but it's nevertheless absolutely true. The lead female is not taught to be self-sacrificial. She's taught to make the men around her better. Like,
Mhm.
and so this turns its head on a lot of feminist faith-based film because the theme that I captured from this was the Eden, right? It is the Eden. The Eve wants to eat the apple, and the apple is her own self actualization as a
Mhm.
musician, her own individual self. That's Eve with the apple.
Yeah.
And the question is, are you going to give up this personal experience
Mm.
for the sake of your own family and your own heritage and your
Yeah.
future and the future of the larger community? Or are
Hmm.
you going to do what the typical faith-based film would tell you to do, which is pursue your own self-interest as a feminist
Mm.
and say that no, I'm correct and we of course should be equal and whatever that means, but all it means is I get my own way, right? Really, that's all it means.
Hmm.
But that's really Eve biting the apple. And so many like where the faith-based stuff fails is often with feminism, but feminism always tells women to bite the apple. And that's the weakness of feminism. And
Yeah.
so this story actually, this is one of the reasons I did an article on it, even though it follows a lot of faith-based tropes. And there's other, there's other movies I could talk about on Angel Studios, but this one to me at least had some beauty to it that actually turns these some of these tropes on their head. And so I was detecting that her father felt neglected. Her grandfather, rather, felt neglected and felt like he's the only person left holding on to this heritage. And this is like our country right now, right? There's a lot of, it's not about the old and the young. It's about just the people who are traditional or the people who holding on to conservative values, right? And they feel like they've been left in the lurch by a lot of people who have decided that it's all about them and it's all about their own personal self-actualization and their own individual kind of indulgence in out into the world, self-indulgence. And they're saying, well, this is what I deserve. Let me tell you, guy, whenever you see a commercial saying this is what you deserve better. This is all a huge lie. All of it's just an enormous lie. You don't deserve that. Like you should be thankful to have anything good because all of us are sinners and fallen short of the glory of God. We don't deserve to have any of these iPhones or whatever technology or whatever privilege we have. We don't deserve to have rights as American citizens. We don't deserve to have any of that. So all of this privilege and acting like I deserve stuff is really bad for society. Instead, we should go around everywhere serving our fellow man, being grateful just that we have life and health and well-being, and that God has given us some talent, something to do with our lives, something to do with our hands to serve our fellow man. That's actually really important that you, let me switch over here. Yeah, that's better. That's actually really important that you realize that your proper place before God is as a servant before God, and you have lots of fellow man to serve as peers with, to serve each other and help each other. We'll be talking about this on cultural warfare in a minute, but the top topic is when the body of Christ acts, or when letting the body of Christ work. And so we'll talk a little bit about true self-actualization in the church, what that really looks like. But Green and Gold plays into that a little bit because it is about this girl, really, and the decision she has to make. Is she going to be of the world, right? Or is she going to be a conservative to conserve family values, virtues, right? You remember today, I showed you this video, Carl Benjamin. He's this English conservative, right?
Yeah.
He's not a Christian, but he's kind of flirting with Christianity. Uh, he goes to church with his wife because his wife's a Christian.
And
But
he speaks highly of Christian ideas.
yes, he speaks highly of Christian ideals and ideas and cultural Christianity. Well, he goes to this, he put out this video, I think it was today or yesterday, about the only classical education school in the UK. Like it's the only one that exists. It was actually started, I think in 2023 or something, 22. Um, and now it's being threatened to be taken away. But he talked about how it was so beautiful watching these kids sing like hymns and classical songs in
Mm-hmm.
their classical education, and like how beautiful all that was,
Yeah.
and how we could be, right? If we serve our fellow man, we could be providing a great life for our kids and for our community if we would stop just thinking of ourselves everywhere we go and thinking about what we deserve, right? And then shuffling off the responsibility to government about how to help our community. I'm sorry, but socialism is kicking the can down the road. None of that's ever worked. And it's all about shuffling off your responsibility to someone else who supposedly is some expert. But really, they're just experts at minimizing other people who don't like them. They're experts at othering people who don't like socialism. They're experts at media propaganda to make themselves look good. And then they're experts at killing people and destroying and taking all their goods. This is not a moral government, right? So this is another reason it's good I brought up that subject before of a moral government, because that's not moral. And so now they've taken all this moral education away from people in the UK. They can't even have classical education there. It's absurd. And all classical education is really doing is teaching the trivium, what they used to teach in Greek, Greek and Roman stuff. And then later on, I think he called it the Elizabethan version of classical education, which
Uh,
did sound quite beautiful. That was pretty cool. It's just the English, the more the height of the English Empire version of it, which actually sounded pretty good. They're probably teaching the Faerie Queene and stuff, but
mhm.
like, good stuff. But like, he was quite impressed,
Yeah.
with what schools could be,
Hmm.
if you just put the kids' best interest at heart instead of yourself, and like, and your virtue signal you have with government and with the socialist government you want, standardized education, and you make yourself feel good. And this stuff actually doesn't benefit or help or show love to these kids at all. So really, kids should be allowed to get a better education that their parents can pay for, you know? And so many of these ways that you can love neighbor are just taken away when you have these controlling systems that are kind of like about judging your neighbor instead of loving your neighbor. So obviously, as you know, socialism judges your neighbor because it says if you have a certain amount of money, you should be penalized for that, and that money belongs to you instead. And so even though they do more work or different work or better work, which is why they have the money, you're going to take that away from them. So it penalizes people. It's not a love your neighbor kind of system. It's like envy, jealousy, these other sins that we're not supposed to exhibit towards a neighbor. I mean, it literally says, don't covet your neighbor's wife or his goods or his things or his blah, 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 which is literally what socialism does. So, not to get too political with all of this, but I found that was a really interesting video with Carl Benjamin. But
Yeah,
this,
that was inspiring. We have used a classical model for a few years in our
yeah,
homeschool, and I'm a big fan.
classical conversations.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little homeschool co-op.
There's also the classical schools up in like in the Reformed community, that are I think a little more traditional. And then obviously, like, Carl Benjamin was talking about the Elizabethan English version of it. The idea, I think, is that you start with grammar.
Yep,
And grammar is about memorization,
yep.
memorization of definitions, dates, people, etc. Then it's about understanding all of that information, starting to understand it.
Hmm.
And then it's about forming that understanding into an argument.
Hmm.
So I believe it goes grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric.
Yeah.
And so all of those things are not done at once, they're done in different stages. So you start when you're young with grammar, And then when you're, about 10 years old, 12 years old, stuff like this, you're getting into dialectic. And that's about understanding what all these facts are about, getting the whole truth of all these stories about history and other people, um, or other facts you need to know. And then it's about forming your own opinions and arguments about these things in history and about all the things you've learned. So that's basically the trivium.
Yeah.
And so it comes from a lot of this tradition in the Greek. And then the Romans learned from the Greeks, especially in their cultural heritage and things like this. And then the us Americans were coming about during a neoclassical period in which we were studying the classics. We were studying what made these cultures great, and that's why we have democracy today. We saw that monarchies weren't all working, weren't all good, and could end up in tyranny very quickly. So we wanted to form systems of accountability. Democracy tends to do that well, but it also doesn't do that perfectly if you have a direct democracy. That doesn't always work well. So you have to use representative democracies, and you have to use branches of government, and you have to have individual rights. And all that stuff is formed in a constitution. And if you can't all do that, then you have a whole lot of places where your government could fall apart. So our government did quite a good job due to its Christian heritage and due to the Renaissance and the Reformation, which was about the respect for truth and respect for freedom of religion. So this all plays into individual rights as well. We're getting a whole lesson here in government because why? Because 4th of July just happened last week. So I've been thinking about some of this stuff and how blessed I am as an American and how I think we should care about our heritage as Americans more. And the fact that even us, right? Even us, and I've talked to you about this recently, even us as homeschoolers, we don't even do enough history. I want us to do more history. I'm hoping to add it to our list of subjects. And a lot of that will probably come from living books in a Charlotte Mason style. So that's fine. But anyway, speaking of the trivium and English classical education, one of our stories is the Faerie Queene gets funded. So if you don't know what the Faerie Queene is, oh my goodness, the truth is I haven't even read it yet, but it's because it's pretty large. But it's written by Edmund Spenser, and I don't have an article on this yet, but what I do have is a website because it got funded. Look at this beautiful website, faeriequeene.com. And of course, Faerie Queene is not spelled like the typical Faerie Queene. Look at this. Edmund Spenser's The Faerie Queene. I believe it was written in 1590. And the writer Edmund Spenser kind of this is, of course, as you know, after the Middle Ages. Well, I hope you know that. If you know anything about history, 1590 was not the Middle Ages, my friends. You could say the Middle Ages ended mid 1300s to late 1300s. Some people even say 1299. But let's just say that the Faerie Queene was a re-up of medieval values, right? Or of an understanding of beauty in the Middle Ages. And this is because Edmund Spenser's language in the Faerie Queene, which you could say was epic poetry, of course, his language was not the real lingua franca or the diction in the Middle Ages or in the modern time that he wrote it. So he was essentially inventing a different version of English at the time, but he did it out of a kind of passionate admiration for the Middle Ages and for the beauty that he found during that period. So the Faerie Queene has a lot of legends, English legends, of course. The Faerie Queene herself, which is the title, was supposed to be, I believe, Elizabeth, that he wrote it during her reign. And
That's right.
yeah, and he was a someone in her court, essentially, who many artists in the court of royals would create art for their king or queen. And this was essentially something that he created for his queen, Elizabeth. And so she becomes a character in his story. And this is, of course, a virtuous character. He's not going to like insult his queen in his story. So that's silly. So, but he's also, as artists were at the time, they actually did have enough freedom to be able to speak their mind. And in fact, that was seen as a beautiful thing back then. It proved that your royal was benevolent and kind and merciful. And that meant they were a better um, monarch. There's this interesting history there with artists in the court of their king or queen, and they are kind of roasting roasting their king or queen in a delightful, fun way. And so they'd like to ride this line of placating their royal while at the same time skewering them in the social eye. So a good artist knew how to do that and not cross the line, right? Just kind of playfully, not mock, but kind of point out some imperfection that their ruler has. And this not only the beautiful thing about this, and this is why royals allowed it, is it humanized the monarch. It made them relatable and lovable in some way, you know, but also it deified them by putting them in an eternal work of art that will never die. So they become a character, right? And this was true for painters. They would paint the monarch and they would make them epic. And at a certain point, yes, in the Enlightenment period, they would make them less than epic. But this was all seen as a cultural benefit, not just to the royal, but to that society. So it was like a gift to that society to paint a picture of the royal in all of their beauty and splendor and sometimes ugliness. And obviously, during the Enlightenment, sometimes it goes too far. But this is a period really before the Enlightenment, but during the Renaissance, where royals were still admired and blessed by their people, but also there was a healthy skepticism as well. So hadn't quite gone to the level of Napoleon and where Napoleon is crowning himself emperor. Hadn't quite got to that point yet, where the Enlightenment went a little crazy and off the rails, but it was to the point of a healthy distance that you had with your monarch, where you kind of did idolize them to some degree, but you didn't necessarily deify them, if that makes any sense. So Faerie Queene was a little more on the side of deification. She was still very pure and chaste and holy and blessed by God. But she also was a human being. So, and could make mistakes. So Faerie Queene kind of like personifies the rich artistic history of that period. And they loved the Middle Ages. It was kind of a re-up of, I think I mentioned that word before, but it was kind of a sequel.
Would you say it was a revival?
Yes, it was like a medieval revival in the arts. And this also occurred again in the late 1800s with the Romantic era,
Mm.
and the pre-Raphaelites. So that was also another revival of medieval kind of conservative medieval values, right? And so these kinds of periods have been going on through history. We like to think of our current era where there's liberal values, conservative values, liberal values, conservative values. And this is the worst one ever. Oh, I assure you, this has happened before in history. And at the period in Edmund Spencer, it was going into a conservative period of remembering the beauty and the greatness of the medieval time. And so there was this sort of romanticism before the Romantic period, of course, which is the mid 1800s. But there was this sort of romanticizing in some ways of the medieval. And of course, as you see this quote here by C.S. Lewis, he says, "The Faerie Queene never loses a reader it has once gained. Once you have become an inhabitant of its world, being tired of it is like being tired of London or of life."
Mm.
And so, of course, London there for
Yeah,
England.
just in reading Surprised by Joy, he mentions the Faerie Queene.
Yes, it's just one of those things I think that inspires every English writer. You know, him, Edmund Spencer, Shakespeare, Milton, Dickens. These are just the people that inspire every English writer. If you're not influenced by them in your English, there's something wrong with your brain. Uh, for Americans, it's people like Longfellow, and the modern era, there's people like Hemingway and Faulkner, and who's the guy who did On the Road?
Kerouac.
Kerouac, people like this. But this is very modern. This is nothing like there's nothing like this historical kind of like depth in America. Um, so in many ways, I find inspiration from the English, right? If you want to go farther back in history, you know, a lot of these things were happening in Europe and especially in England. Similar things that happened in the US, like I mentioned, the conservative versus liberal values, the ups and downs of that. It's been going on a long time. This is Andrew Peterson, a quote by Anderson Peterson, who was author of the Wingfeather Saga. He said, Reynolds, by the way, Reynolds is the person who wrote this English translation now for this particular book that they're selling here, which was, and it's funny, I haven't even mentioned that this Faerie Queene is a crowdfund that was just completed.
Ooh.
Um, and so that's why this page is here.
Is it a movie?
No, it's a book printing, but it's a beautiful book printing.
Ooh.
And I can show actually where you can buy it. Let me read this quote by Andrew Peterson. He says, Reynolds' new rendering of the Faerie Queene was made for people like me, for those of us who time and again have heard of Spenser's great poem but were too intimidated to read it. We're drawn to the feeling of adventure, mystery, danger, and beauty conjured merely by mention of the title, but fear that maybe we aren't smart enough, or wise enough, or brave enough to enter into an old tale so revered by so many. Enter Rebecca Reynolds' incredible mind and mastery of language, coupled with hospitality toward the reader. Enter also Justin Gerard, a master artist whose gifts are perfectly suited to a vision like Spenser's. Rather than turned away at the door to Elfland, I found myself welcomed in to its wonders by Reynolds' clear and careful handling of the original text, along with her generous footnotes and Gerard's stunning illustrations, and was at once surrounded by knights and war horses, dwarves and dragons, high beauties and heavy skies. This book does a great service not just to Edmund Spenser, but to those of us who will encounter this grand story for the first time. So I hope to purchase one of these, even though it's
Wow.
quite expensive. Let me show you. Look at this. Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. So it's a 3-volume work. Each, of course, they have books 1 and 2 of the work in Volume 1, books 3 and 4 here, and books 5, 6, and 7 here. I think the last 2 or so are shorter, so that's why they go in there. And then, so this is their page, Sky Turtle Press. I think they're going to be at Realm Makers, by the way. So I want to see if they have any of these there. But if you look, here is where you can purchase them. And I found this one, of course, Edmund Spencer's Faerie Queene prose rendering, created by Sky Turtle Press. This was the Kickstarter, which of course you can find here at Kickstarter. Edmund Spencer's The Faerie Queene, a prose rendering. And then if you go to their pre-order store, that's where you can buy it. But I didn't even know about this Kickstarter. This was happening way back in 2023, I believe. But so why is this relevant now? Well, look, it last updated June 26th, 2025, and it talks about how the answer, did you cry? Faerie Queene update. Basically about, did she cry that she got the first printing? So, and yes, she did. And so she talks about the beautiful art here. This is the box here that she got. So that's gonna be sent out in the mail to people who purchase them. It's true that they're not cheap, but these are, my goodness, worthy hardcovers. It says, now onto the books. I can't capture a picture that shows the beauty of the dust jackets, but everything on the outside of the image is a sort of soft touch feel. The inner illustration has a gloss coating, so the intense colors show through. We asked Justin Gerard to create this outer frame image, hoping to get this exact look, and it worked. The dust jacket feels like you're stepping through the woods into another realm. Early on, we told you about our plan to copy the size of the old Bomb Sea Fairies and Sky Island books. So those are ones that they kind of were trying to emulate. This has resulted in books that feel balanced and comforting to hold. The pages are a beautiful width. So they really took put a lot of effort into making these books beautiful. I mean, they look like a Lord of the Rings kind of thing, and the filigree and the gold. Look at that, the gold work on there. It's beautiful.
Wow.
Now let's look inside. Can you see how achingly beautiful these end papers are? I've seen these pages in my sleep, and now they're the real thing. Man, I think I can understand how she feels. That's really great. Step inside Fairyland with me. So this is some of the pages inside.
Oh, wow, that looks great.
Gorgeous. We have 80 illustrations. Several are full page and in color. So yeah, I mean, this is just her flipping through it. Canto 7, Book 6. It's a nice big print. Really gorgeous. And so look, they even have a bookmark with the knight on it. It's great.
I love how they photographed it on that green blanket. It looks like
Yeah.
rolling hills.
And so this is a recent update. That means it's been recently fulfilled, and you can purchase it here. This is the backer kit, which allows people to purchase it outside of their typical Kickstarter. And so that means basically if you didn't get to purchase it during the initial crowdfund, you can purchase it later. So here it has the Faerie Queene standard hardcover for $100. That's all 3 books. And then $200 for the hardcover book set the deluxe hardcover book set with faux leather, and then the signed and numbered faux leather deluxe for 300. So this is not a cheap thing, but that means if you're purchasing the standard one, you're getting each one for about $33. So that's not bad, really. And if you want that like faux leather, soft faux leather, you get, you know, it's going to cost a little bit more. Yeah. Wow. Edmund Spencer's work is beautified here. And I do kind of hope to grab the three standard ones if I can. I'll be going to Realm Makers this year. I heard that Realm Makers, this is the first time that they are doing this in a convention center. So they're going to be at the DeVos Center in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I believe July 18th, 19th, 20th. So it's only about a week from now. I think I'll be there.
Yeah, that's
Wow,
right.
the time is really coming, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. So I can't wait. And I'll be able to hopefully read the whole thing on the way with audiobook. It's pretty long though. It's pretty big. So we'll see if it even fits in my MP3 player. But we'll see. The only other story we have is Isabel Brown joins the Daily Wire. Here we go. Here's MediaMoses.com, where all of our articles are. Isabel Brown fills largely empty Gen Z shoes at the Daily Wire. Hiring Isabel Brown could be Mike Richards' first important official action at the Daily Wire. I say could because I just don't know, because nobody knows because they won't talk about it. And yes, I'm annoyed by it. All they have to do is do an announcement about what's going on there. But oh, let's enjoy the Isabel Brown as part of the Daily Wire. Okay, sure. Even though we have no idea what else is going on. This morning, Isabel Brown, a longtime Turning Point USA announcer and show host of the Isabel Brown Show, which has been a staple in conservative Gen Z content for years now, has announced it has signed on with the Daily Wire. A new show, yes and no. She plans to work on in her new DC home and place of business and run the same show with some new additions, including a new original show with Daily Wire, which, by the way, is coming this fall. So I thought it was coming right away at first, and then I realized, oh yeah, read the small print, it's coming this fall. So they've announced it, but it's not quite here yet. I have a link to the Daily Wire announcement here. They published a second article in the Daily Wire as well about it, kind of introducing you to her. The Daily Wire is certainly going through some changes as of late. The main question in this is what kind of changes are we seeing? I mean, I have a lot of feelings about the Daily Wire. I could mention them here, but I don't think I will mention all of them. I'm mildly put out by the Daily Wire right now. I think that they could do better right now, and I'm not kind of inspired by what they're doing right now. Although I did like we talked about Matt Walsh's book, Church of Cowards. That was
Yeah.
good. That was good, you know. But I mean, look, who put out this article, kind of put out the initial story about this, Isabel Brown. There's a blog / magazine called The Conservateur. Conservateur. It says the Conservateur is run by Berkeley grad fashion enthusiast Jamie Franklin, who gives her background here. So we could watch this a little bit. Fox News Digital.
I started the Conservatoire in 2020, and I just graduated from UC Berkeley. So as you can imagine, it was pretty crazy being a conservative and going to Berkeley. And I had grown up just loving fashion magazines. I used to read Elle magazine, Vogue magazine, Cosmopolitan. I had like a whole stack next to my bed. That was what I actually wanted to do with my life. I wanted to go into fashion. And after Trump was elected in 2016, I just saw these magazines go so far left. And a lot of men actually aren't in touch with the fact that I think that the female culture and fashion space might be the most far left space that we have in like American society. And, I was obviously interested in politics as well, but for me, it was the culture that they were pushing to women I found very toxic and very problematic, whether it be very anti like anti-men sentiments, anti-American sentiments, just like the casual sex culture, the anti-Christian culture, and the anti-white culture, to be quite frank, as well. And I grew up obviously loving America. I believe that we're all equal, and I believe this is an amazing country. And if you're a woman, you can accomplish whatever you want. And I grew up very Catholic, and so I had more traditional beliefs, and I just wanted to push a better culture to young women. Definitely a parallel economy taking place. And I will say, when it comes to non-political and non-value based brands, whether we're talking about clothing, even if you buy like a TV at a Best Buy, that shouldn't be political. That should be for everybody. And I'm not for politicizing everything. But when we are talking about publications and values-based organizations where you are trying to get a message across, I think it's really important that brands step up like the Conservator and make sure, if we are alienated in the magazine world and in women's publications, that there is a place where women who agree with me are being represented. We started our Make America Hot Again hat, which is, we use the same company as the Trump campaign. And that was kind of a play on words. Obviously, it's a fun hat that was so popular for us that people loved. And I think that there's been an uglification, whether you see like modern art or you see, progressives kind of pushing on the woman. It's like, reject men, dye your hair blue and wear a septum piercing. And so we're definitely a backlash to that, where we're like, no, traditional beauty is amazing. And that is what we want to promote to young women, looking your best that you can every day. And that makes you more successful in life.
The Fox News put out that interview with her. Daily Wire did not. And the Conservator, as she says, did this story here, interview with Isabel Brown launching her new show. Here's the Conservator. Become a member. And so they do a nice little sit down with her and talk with her about what her new show is going to look like on the Daily Wire. So that's nice. It was a nice discovery to see that there's other people doing similar things to what Media Moses is trying to do. This is obviously more fashion and lifestyle related than Media Moses, but we would like to go in this direction in the future, and we're looking at the potential to do a magazine as well one day for Media Moses. And so we like a lot of the lifestyle content. We don't think it has to be just for women either. We think it could be for women and men. And I think beauty is not just something women like. Men like beauty as well. We just aren't going to dress like women, right? That's absurd. But we can certainly enjoy masculine men, beautiful women, and a lifestyle that we think is worth living, not just about glamour or about like yourself or about like, but about an aesthetic beauty and kind of a freshness in your life that you can have with Jesus at your side and helping you how to live. Because I think as a Christian, kind of like the Christian lifestyle is essentially the most carefree lifestyle you can have. Like, the most confident, carefree lifestyle you can have is in Christ. There's just no comparison. Otherwise, you're always having to compare with you're always comparing with the Joneses, right? Or you're having to virtue signal to everybody else. All this effort is not required in Christianity. All these burdens you have to put on yourself. And if you don't have them, then you should feel bad. That's absurd in Christianity. But what you can do is fill your life with aesthetics that are pleasing to you and to God, and can really make your life better because you're not concerned with all the things that you're not supposed to be concerned with as a Christian, right? So there is a lifestyle in Christianity that Jesus literally talks about. And there's no reason you can't depict that in images and magazines. There's just no reason you can't do that. And including have entertainment, including talk about culture, including talk about values and culture and virtue and culture and all the things that make life worth living. So I'm I like the Conservator. I think it seems to be a good publication. And it's true that some of it looks very similar to Vogue and these other magazines, and the fashion isn't necessarily um, you know, obviously conservatives need a new fashion movement. You have the trad wife movement and the cottage core kind of thing happening. I think that's beautiful. I think we should see more of that, by the way, in this magazine. I think it would be good if a lot of that showed up here. Not that it's not here. I haven't really looked through it, but it looks well organized. And but there is also an element in conservatism I'm finding that isn't really that traditional. It's sometimes even trashy. And Make America Hot Again, I think is like I understand what she's saying, but it's not like the most conservative, traditional sounding thing ever. It's not about being hot, right? It's about being healthy and pure and lovely and loving all the things that are good, true, and beautiful, you know. And so, yes, you do take care of yourself, and yes, you do care about aesthetics, and yes, you do want a good, healthy life. But you do that possibly for different reasons than the rest of the world would, right? So a little more values based for sure. In fact, I think fashion is incredibly Christian because we understand that there's different seasons to life and that you have a purpose of wearing different clothing at different kinds of the times of the day, different seasons of your life. And if you don't have order and structure in your life, how are you going to know when it's time to dress up, when it's time to dress down, when it's time to wear creative stuff, when it's time to wear what your pastor wants you to wear in church instead of what you want to wear? So, with an orderly kind of Christian lifestyle like that, that actually embraces all of these different seasons, all these different kinds of clothing and aesthetics can be utilized properly. And so, without a conservative lifestyle and conservative values, actually, it's all a free for all. You just do whatever you want, you can just do. That's actually not going to make your life more worth living. I don't know if you noticed that. It makes things less orderly and structured. There's less of a reason to dress up for people, less of a reason to dress down. It's less of a reason to do anything really. It's just all subject to your whims. That's actually just not a way to live. So I'm glad that there's people here who are starting to understand some of this. Conservative values can be put in fashion and lifestyle and health as well. And so when we do a venture, God willing, when we do a venture into magazine, we're going to be adding a lot more of this kind of ethic into what we do. But for right now, I'm proud of the conservator. I think that I'm glad that she saw a need there, right? And that they're doing stories about people like this. So that's pretty cool. What did you think of that, honey?
It looks interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that when she was like that girl, I forget her name now, but uh when she was talking about how she grew up and she like has Vogue next to her, I'm not saying that you were kind of cringing, but I was like a little cringing a little bit like, ooh, like I've seen some of those magazines and I've read some of those articles and I know you have, and you've told me like some of that stuff's the worst stuff I've ever read.
Yeah, women's magazines can be pretty like she said, toxic.
Yeah, quite
So,
toxic and disturbing. Like the kind of stuff they put in them, it's almost like porn stuff. It's just terrible stuff.
yeah.
Bad value system.
Yeah.
But like so many people don't care that their daughters have these by their bed. Like I hope that her mom talked to her about all this stuff. But I mean, she seemed to turn out okay, I guess.
Yeah.
She's at least trying to do something good, right? She's trying to do something good with that, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah. So it's okay. I guess she's okay. She survived. Some of us won't. Some of us don't survive through it. Yeah, it's like you've got to put up a wall to this stuff, to this junk. But anyway, yeah, so that's cool. It's funny, I was talking about Isabel Brown, and then I totally got sidetracked into the conservator because that's more interesting to me, frankly. I'm like,
It
oh,
was,
look, a fashion blog. That's pretty cool.
I was a little confused. I was
Yeah.
like, wait, is this Isabel? Is this the same girl? I didn't.
I hate to say it, but that's kind of the story right now because while I like Isabel Brown, and I really am glad she's come to the Daily Wire, I'm kind of like, like I'm a tad bit disappointed in the Daily Wire right now. I think they really need to like show up, and tell us what's going on with Jeremy Boring and with Mike Richards and with their whole crew. And are they going to do a backstage again? I don't know. Is Isabel Brown going to show up at backstage? Like, who knows? So I guess the Daily Wire to me is starting to kind of um, like Homer Simpson kind of meld into the hedge. Like they're starting to go away and
Yeah.
disappear into away from their cultural relevance. And that's kind of sad, really.
Yeah.
So I'll have to like I'm not gonna say I'm gonna unsubscribe, but it's kind of like I haven't been clicking on there recently. So that's kind of sad. Oh well. So that's the story there. And I hope that they do well though, and I hope that they come back to relevance, and I hope that the Pendragon cycle comes, and I hope that I even hope that their Snow White movie gets made,
Yeah.
because they very well might have filmed all the stuff with Brett Cooper already, and
Mm.
they very well might have like have a product in the editing room to release. They just have to find maybe the right time and the right place to do it. So
Yeah.
who knows? But right now, I'm kind of not holding my breath, where a month ago I was. So, oh well, kind of sad.
He's breathing again.
Yeah, I'm freaking breathe again. So, so that's our stories for this week. This brings us to our main topic. I hope you enjoyed your week. Our Media Moses articles can be found on MediaMoses.com. Paid and unpaid subscriptions are available. Next up, our main topic over at Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft. Oh, that's me. See you in a minute as we transition over to that channel.